Welcome. My name is Dr. Justin Adam Gelsizer. I am going to talk to you today about an article that I wrote in 2019. It's entitled International Student Perceptions of American Gun Culture and School Shootings, a Public Health Examination. Currently, I'm a visiting scientist at the Harvard School of Public Health. I'm also an injury prevention postdoc fellow at the Gillian Rennie Stepping Strong Center for Trauma Innovation, as well as a postdoc fellow at Harvard Medical School. I also started a YouTube channel pretty recently, and I'm going through a variety of topics related to mental health. This is one that connects to this current video, which talks about school shootings in a post-COVID-19 world. And I lay out 5 reasons why I believe that it could be worse than ever before. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below, please like this video, comment about your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and also check out this video and let me know what you think about that one. So how did I get interested in this topic with international students and guns? Well, I wanted to do research on international students. I've traveled a lot. I've worked with international students. I was one myself over in Europe, and I talked to a lot of them. I did a pilot study where I did some initial interviews, and they kept saying, guns, guns, guns. We are afraid of guns in America. And so we were talking about this issue, and the day I was supposed to present my findings that I'm actually going to do my PhD dissertation on guns and international students, June 1st, 2016, ironically, UCLA had a campus shooting, and there was a murder-suicide that happened. I ended up actually being on campus at the time with about 65 of my students. We got stuck in a computer room. This is a picture here of us covering the window, trying to protect ourselves from gunfire or anything that could have happened that we thought might happen. And the FBI got involved. There was over 200 police officers that were there. We were locked down for over 2.5 hours. And it was a really traumatic event. And at the time, we thought that it was a targeted terrorist attack. And here's an example of a text message from that day from a few students. And I think it's one female student to another says, "This is what we know so far. 4 confirmed attackers, all with assault rifles. It was planned. 1 hit South Campus, 1 hit North Campus, 1 hit the apartments, 1 hit sprawl in the dorms. The SWAT team's on the way. Don't worry, babe." And this kind of captures what I want to talk about today, where the likelihood of you being involved in a school shooting in America is incredibly low. However, the emotional, mental, psychological impact of this happening to you, whether or not it does happen to you or not, is very powerful and profound. And I wanted to look at this from the perspective of international students, and we'll get into the reasons why for that. So this, in a nutshell, is what the study is about. So a shooting in an American educational institution quickly creates a global ripple effect due to the large number of international students enrolled in American secondary schools and higher education institutions. International students studying in the United States may offer unique insight into local and global perceptions of American gun culture, highlight the transnational physical, emotional, and psychological impact of gun violence, and offer fresh understandings about the American gun violence public health problem. So there you go. So let's first take a step back and look at the macro level context and the relationship with guns and the United States, and in particular, intentional and unintentional death and injury. So in 2017, there were 40,000 gun-related deaths in the United States. And that's about 109 per day. So imagine every single day in 2017, there were on average over 100 people who died because of a gunshot wound. These deaths were violence related. And that's an important factor we'll get into later. This includes suicides that are 60%. So over half of all gun-related deaths in the United States during this time were dealing with suicides. And also 36.5% were homicides respectively. And this was the highest rate in over 25 years. In the same year, 367 people were shot per day on average and left with non-fatal injuries. So when you look at injury prevention, you have to look at it from an intentional and unintentional framework. where the intentional is violence, right? You are hoping to inflict violence, a violent act on somebody. Then there's the unintentional. A child gets into the drawer of their parents and there's a gun in there and shoots their sibling. There's a lot of different things that can happen unintentionally. You also are hunting, you point it accidentally at somebody, you think it's the safety is on and it's not. We need to look at the international comparative side. So the United States, how does it look like compared to other countries around the world? And in this case, we're going to look at high income countries. So the US had homicide rates 3 to 5 times higher than other developed Western nations. And you see here the statistics: Canada, France, the UK, and Germany, and Australia. This is the rate at which they had these homicide rates. So this really is a unique problem among high income countries with the United States. Also, macro level context, let's look at what a mass public shooting is. It's when it involves 4 or more people being killed. And there are many, many mass murders with shootings in the United States per year. And they can happen in these places called soft targets, which can be a school, a workplace, a restaurant. Statistically speaking, they are less than 1%. So these mass shootings are less than 1% of the gun-related death that happens in the United States. However, to the general public, they are the most visible form of firearm violence. Because when you have a mass shooting, it can have huge ripple effects throughout the world. And we're going to get into why it's around the world and not just the United States. But it instills fear in communities. People worry about going out to concerts or going out to basketball games or going to places that they have too many people around where something could happen. So also, American school shootings are part of a major gun-related public health epidemic. And it's important to kind of take that framework, understand that this gun problem is not just a little problem that we have and it happens once in a while. This is an epidemic. This is something that is happening regularly, and it's been happening regularly for many, many years. So as American school shootings continue and our students are both directly and indirectly exposed to their impacts, how then can we best confront this crisis and ensure that we are providing a better society for our youth? And that is part of this, that international students are part of this discussion. Are our educational institutions becoming places that replicate fear and anxiety, or hope and promise for future generations? So I like to put this in the educational context. When a school shooting, particularly a school shooting happens, there are parents all over the world who are worried about their children in these schools and what's going to happen. And that, again, the deep psychological impact it can have does not have to occur just when you were involved in an active in a school shooting. It can also occur when you see it on the news and then you're worried about sending your son or daughter or your brother or sister to school and not really being sure if they're going to be safe. Next, I want to encourage people to consider using a public health approach to American school shootings. David Hemingway and Matt Miller, they give a 5-step approach, which I'll briefly read here. Part 1 is you want to look at risk factors. So for example, to prevent school shootings, are those involved, are there certain demographics that they might have, so such as males are more likely than females, right? So you can already start to narrow down targeted ways to intervene and prevent gun violence in the schools. Things like alcohol use, if somebody uses a lot of alcohol or drugs, or they're into certain things, you want to really look at it from that lens of risk factors, because then you can help you target who to reach and do it with a stronger lens. Number 2, a focus on prevention. So you want to go as far upstream as possible. That means when something bad happens, there are a series of steps that go for that to happen. So such as a car accident, here's the series of steps. 1, a person has bad glasses. 2, there's mud on their window. 3, the road is not designed properly. 4, it rains. 5, the person's on their cell phone and distracted. And you look at all these factors and you want to say, let's look at going as far upstream as possible where you can prevent it. And so one example could be, if the window is muddy on the car will send an alarm and so you're taking away a risk factor. And then the person makes that adjustment. And that little adjustment could be the difference between having an accident and not. Number 3, a human factors engineering. That's kind of what I was saying here. you assume people are going to make mistakes. They're going to mess up. And this is both intentional and unintentional, where if someone is intentionally trying to start a school shooting, but they cannot get access to a gun, for example, or the gun is locked in safe where they can't get access to it for the time being, that can actually build enough time and space so that school shooting doesn't happen. Or another one, you have to look at the school building itself is designed where no guest can just come to the school. They have to go through a series of protections, and that way a school shooter can't just walk on to a campus or school and do what they want to do. There's things in place to prevent that from happening. But the fourth and fifth point is what I really want to focus on, which is a collective effort among all members of society. And what this basically is, when you're talking about overcoming school shootings and this issue in the United States, you want to include everybody, as many people as possible, because this is a societal issue. And if it's a societal issue, you want to include society. And a piece of that is going to be international students. And we're going to get into the numbers with that. Number 5, it is a shared responsibility among all members of society. And this is important as well, because if people take on the responsibility where a student sees something online about their classmate making threats and they report it, that is something that they're doing to prevent injury or death, in this case, intentional. And you want to include everybody possible. All right, so let's get into the study. My main research aim is using a qualitative, that is when you do interviews or focus groups, you're dealing with human-to-human interaction with a public health approach, looking at international students and their perceptions of American gun culture and shootings. So I have 4 research questions. The first is, what were the international students and their families' attitudes and perceptions of American gun culture and school shootings before they came? So when just imagine, they're in their home country, they think they're going to go to the US, or they have decided to go to the US to study. What are their perceptions? And in this case, we're going to look at Chinese and Indian, which is the 2 largest international student groups in the United States currently here that are studying in our universities and schools of higher education. And so what are their perceptions? And we'll get into later why that's important. Number 2, what factors may have influenced these perceptions? So is it mass media, movies, music? Is it social media? I know in China they have Wechat, which is kind of like what we use WhatsApp and so on. Are these things part of that process? The third one is, how have their attitudes and related behaviors evolved after arriving on campus? So now imagine they arrive here, they come in with these preconceived ideas, and how does that evolve over the year? Say in this case, the first year they're at a university, do they stay the same? Do they change? What's the process? Number 4, what are their general thoughts and opinions about school safety in America? And what do they think about how American campuses can become safer places? All right. So the criteria for you to participate in the study was you have to be a first-year student at UCLA. This is where I did it. And you also have to be an international student on an F1 visa. That's a special type of visa for them. And also, participants have never been to UCLA before the 2017-2018 academic year. That's important because I didn't want those students that I worked with to have been on campus during the UCLA shooting, which would have completely changed their perception of the study. I wanted people and seeing the process they went through before and after coming to the US, but post school shooting. Okay, so data collection. I did 2 separate focus groups that had 11 students from India, 7 from China. And I also picked 2 students from each of those groups and did a very long, in-depth interviews with them. For the analysis portion, this again is qualitative research, and I wanted to collect data from different angles. It's called triangulating the research in order to have a more clear picture of what these students are thinking, feeling, and believing. And also, upon completion of the described research methods, I found that there were several clear or salient patterns that emerged among what they were saying, and that is the findings section. So that's basically probably what you care about watching this. What do these international students think about the questions you ask them? All right, so here are where the participants are from. I took out their name to protect their identity. You see, this is the Chinese group here. And they're from all over China, from Harbin up in the north, all the way to Guangzhou and Guangdong in the south. And I wanted to include from different regions of China. China has 1.4 billion people. It's the largest country in the world. And I wanted to make sure that in some way, even though it's a very small study, and I recognize the limitations of that, I wanted to at least not just pick everybody from Beijing, for example. In India, with our students here, you see, again, they're from a variety of places throughout the country. I wanted to, again, reach out to cities beyond just Mumbai, for example. I wanted to see what different people thought in the second biggest country in the world with 1.3 billion people. All right, so results in discussion. Here's the first piece. Preconceptions about gun violence and safety before coming to America. Remember, that was the first research aim about American gun violence. It is a major concern for them. The first thing is mass and social media regarding safety and gun violence in America, in their opinion, it blends together over time. So they're in their countries, they hear all this stuff about American school shootings, and they kind of forget exactly what happened, where, and when it happened, but it becomes this overall lens through which they look at the United States and safety, which is America has a gun problem, this overarching theme about safety in the US. Again, there's a quote here on the second one, America is not doing more to stop their gun problem. They feel not just does America have a gun problem, quote unquote, but they're not doing enough to stop it and prevent these shootings. If the shootings are happening, that's enough evidence to say that they're not doing enough, in their opinion. And they also say they seem to make a clear correlation between an ease in gun purchase in the US with occurrences in deadly gun violence. So in other words, to them, it makes sense. If you can easily get a gun, you're going to have a lot of shootings. That just makes sense to them. So this is their general broad view before coming to the US about that. This is another one here. They have come to accept that if they're going to the US to go to our great universities, that they're going to have to accept that this is part of their life that they're going to experience, that they can't really separate themselves from it, that there is a chance of a shooting happening at any time, at anywhere in the United States when they're here, that they don't feel in their respective countries as China and India, where a private citizen cannot own a gun. And again, these are the perspectives of these international students here. They also say that some are safer than others. So international students, when they're in their countries, begin to build an idea of where one place might be safer than another. And one place they say is St. Louis, Missouri, and Detroit, Michigan. They say just don't study there. Break up Los Angeles into safe and unsafe areas. UCLA being in a more affluent area with Beverly Hills and Santa Monica and Brentwood. They're saying, well, it's a safer area. We feel safer here because of the community around there. But USC is in a different area. We feel less safe there. Therefore, we go to UCLA, we'll be safer. And as I mentioned earlier, they also do this balancing act. So if the university has a really, really good ranking, then such as say the University of Chicago, and they know that Chicago is not that safe in their opinion, then they'll say, well, it's University of Chicago. And we're gonna do this because you can't give up that opportunity. All right, next, the Chinese perspectives that, again, UCLA shooting that they did hear about is part of a bigger problem. That it's not just UCLA, but this is a systemic issue that the US is trying to figure out. And again, it feeds into this narrative that America is dangerous for them, that they're not concerned more about the shooting at UCLA, post-UCLA shooting, but it just feeds into this idea of what they're hearing in China, which is just America's unsafe. Also, Chinese students are the largest demographic of international students, so they have so many people they can talk to about this. So I think there's over 300,000 Chinese international students currently in higher education in America. Well, I guess not with COVID, but there will be again soon. And these students have a large frame of reference of people they can speak to. So why is that important? This is important because if they don't know what they get accepted to Kansas City, Missouri, and they don't know what to do about it, and whether it's safe or whether they should accept it, there's going to be Chinese students there, and they're going to find a way to connect with them, and they can get on the ground information about those student experiences and whether it's safe or not. And finally, they feel it, but no place is exempt from a potential shooting. And I also put here, it's interesting, some people asked me when I did the study, why do we need to care about international students? Like, shouldn't we worry about the US first and what Americans are going through? But you have to remember, first of all, we are a country of immigrants. We should be welcoming to all. And this is a part of the American internationalization effort. You want our schools to be diverse. You want a variety of perspectives, people from around the world. And also, people forget that a lot of these international students become Americans. They get green cards, but some of them actually become US citizens and they get voting rights. So to say, oh, we don't, care about their opinion, because they're international, is just a really bad way to think for a variety of reasons, but one being that many of them going to be future Americans. As the students continue their educational experience at UCLA, they find themselves in a contested terrain where the perceptions that they constructed prior to California are now changing, and they just don't know what to make of it. And sometimes that means it's safer than they expected. Sometimes it's more dangerous than they expected. And usually it's both, and it depends where they are currently at in Los Angeles. As a whole, the international students feel safer than they expected after moving to America, but the actions they do is like how they viewed America before they came. In other words, even though they think it's safer now at UCLA and in Westwood and around where they live, their actions are still, let's be incredibly careful. Again, these are first-year students. Let's just continue to do what we expected to do, or what our family tells us to do to keep safe. So one thing that's important to note is the Chinese students, there was the one-child policy in China. So most of them, in fact, in my study, none of them have brothers or sisters. So they grew up in homes with much, much less people. And that impacts what they might do when they get to the United States to keep safe. They also want the same freedom that they had in China, but they don't want to go to places alone. So what do? They decide to have certain behaviors, like don't take this bus at this time. They feel, for example, that Uber is safer than a bus, so they'll pay a little bit more money, and that way they don't have to worry about their safety. Now, this is the section on current attitudes and behaviors related to gun violence and safety. So other key survival techniques, some students refuse to go out after 9 p.m. And when I say don't go out, I mean they don't leave their dorms or apartments after 9 p.m. And this is important to recognize, because if there's a night class and they came to America to work with this professor, and this professor's teaching class that starts at 7:30, it ends around 10, and they have to take maybe commute home, they might not take this class unless they get a friend or friends to join the class with them. And that's not often easy to do. And so this directly impacts their educational experience. Next, they keep less than $20 in their pockets. I think that's a good overall safety thing to do anywhere you go in the world. They go to places where there's more lights and fewer dark areas than they feel parts of UCLA. So they actually will, some of them will walk certain patterns of going home because they know there's more light, even if the route is longer than if they took more of a dark route that's direct. And they know where the emergency boxes are located around campus. I can guarantee you, most American students do not know where the emergency box is to call the police. Now you might say, well, they can just use their cell phone and call whatever. That's true, but if there's an emergency, or you drop your phone, or you're being robbed and you need to get a hold of someone, these international students recognize the specific tools that colleges put to keep safe, where Americans will kind of overlook them. Next, other ones. So again, we mentioned choosing safe times to use public transportation. And they actually have a map in their mind of where they can and cannot go. Most of the students in this study, Indian and Chinese, do not go to downtown Los Angeles. They just don't feel safe there. They don't feel it's worth going there, putting themselves at risk. So there's a whole section of Los Angeles where a lot of things can go on down there that they just won't go to. And this map that they have is evolving. So the campus itself, if they hear of a Chinese friend or an Indian friend of theirs having a hard time and they got robbed somewhere on campus, then they will avoid that part of campus, or then all the students will know what happened and their perceptions will change. Now, that may not make the news. Other people may not know that because of their interconnected and close-knit communities, if something happens to one of them, they're probably all gonna know. The next section talks about personal encounters with guns and safety. So here we have a female student from this very small group of people that I worked with. She had a man that followed her, was misbehaving, she said, around her. And she said that this would never happen to me in the streets of India. It's always full of people. There's so many people around. No one's going to try this type of thing because they're going to get caught. They're going to see what this person's doing and try to stop it. In the US and here at UCLA, she said, while I'm walking home, there's nobody around me. And so if somebody wants to approach me, there's nobody to scream out to. There's no one to deter this person from trying to do something bad to me. This is a story here of a personal encounter where a male student from India says 3 UCPD officers with drawn guns on the 5th floor. They told him to get inside one of the offices and lock the door behind him. And he was shocked. They said, he walks out and they say, go, 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 get inside, lock the door, go, go, go. And they had their guns drawn. And that was the first time he said he ever saw a gun before. He hadn't seen a gun. And so it was just kind of this traumatizing experience for him. And he thought, wow, this really school shooting could really happen at any time, anywhere. And now that I'm so comfortable being here after several months, I kind of underestimated that. And this is a wake-up call. So the study itself, ironically, got the students to think about guns again and their experience with safety in America. And they felt that, okay, I do need to start taking my safety more seriously. And that was kind of a byproduct of the study. And ironically, some of them told me later that they actually talked to their friends about the study and their friends said, yeah, we need to be much safer, and we haven't done that. Open campus. This is another issue with a lot of the international students. They said, okay, wait, we don't really see security guards around the school. There's no fence around the school. There's no campus wall. So basically anybody at any time can just walk on to basically any American college or university and do whatever that they want to do. Now, of course, someone's going to stop them eventually, but that type of unfettered access would not happen in their own countries, according to what they said. So they didn't like that even buildings sometimes, or offices or classrooms, weren't locked. So it wasn't just getting on campus, it was actually going into buildings, being able to walk around. And I noticed that myself. If you go onto most campuses, you can get in most places without having a key or security card. And they also mentioned that no one checks their ID, even in the library. And that's really interesting that anyone can just come in. They also said that the idea that anyone can enter campus at their leisure is a safety concern, and it does not prevent future acts of violence. And this is something that they think needs to change. Social media can, as both fear and community. So yeah, they hear about a mass shooting or a school shooting on social media. It raises their fear and their hesitations about going to a campus. But at the same time, social media provides a comfort for them, somebody to talk to, information gathering, to realize it's not as maybe in their minds dangerous as they thought it would be because their other friends have never had a problem before. And the next piece, these conversations on the phone and social media don't just include their family members or close friends. These include old classmates, community members. There's a very, very tight-knit community that these people are working with each other. Media chats foster commonality among community members. And if you are a Chinese international student, there's a place for you digitally where you can feel at home. And on Wechat, which is their main app that a lot of them use, you can have up to 500 people on a chat at a time, 500. So imagine they have multiple group chats for people from all over the country, and they're getting information in real time about things that are happening. So it's not just 1 or 2 people that they're talking to or reading information about, specifically about their people from their country and safety. It's a very large group of people. So random acts of gun violence, like mass shootings, are the real concern. So they weren't really concerned about targeted shootings where their roommate's going to shoot them or somebody doesn't like them and they want to kill them. They're more worried about these indiscriminate attacks where it could happen anytime, anywhere to anybody. And there's no way to prevent that from happening. So potential challenges and limitations to the study. So again, this is qualitative humanistic research. It is not meant to be generalized. This is just meant to talk about the specific experiences of these students in the study and provide a small window into other possibilities and other research studies. I also only looked at 2 nationalities out of the nearly 200 that are in the world and of international students who are in America. I did this because these are the largest groups in the United States, but you also have to consider where other students are from and their own experiences. So another limitation here, or one thing that we need to consider as a researcher is doing a follow-up study where you can do a quantitative analysis, so a survey with a lot of people, and then you can combine it with more qualitative, humanistic, and do a mixed method research study. And that's actually what I just completed data collection for about a few months ago. And I'm writing up an article, not just comparing international students to each other from, I think, over 30 countries, but I also collected data from lots and lots of American students. And now I can write research articles comparing American students versus international students, and also comparing international students with each other. And doing these follow-up studies is always trying to improve upon the research you did previously. This was a great introduction into this, and now I want to continue the process. For the conclusion, it's really interesting that when you do research on gun violence, you are going to have a huge reluctance of people to be involved. And that makes sense because it's a very emotional and can be a very personal topic. And international students there's going to be some selection bias where there's going to be some bias of those who will and will not be willing to participate in the study, and that's fine. But again, that is a limitation and an idea to remember that does impact the data that we look at. Gun violence in American schools is a major concern for prospective international students and their families, and also current students that are here. To ignore international student key perspectives is to forget that we live in a global and deeply interconnected global society. When a school shooting happens in the US, whether or not an international student gets hurt, whether or not an international student gets hurt or dies from a school shooting is irrelevant. Because what can happen is it creates a global ripple effect of fear that shooting has a psychological impact on the students. It has it on their families who are abroad. They have conversations, they have communities around the world. And so this problem is not just domestic, it is international and something to think about. Okay, thank you so much for listening to my study. I have my email address here if you'd like to reach out to me. Again, if you watch this whole video, I really appreciate it. Comment below and tell me what you think about this. And finally, subscribe to my channel. I'm doing a lot of these videos on mental health. Here's one that I survived a bus accident in Costa Rica and how it changed my life. And the research I do on guns and the research I do in mental health is all about working together to help improve mental health, not just in the United States, but internationally. And I really hope that this channel and the videos that I'm creating can have some type of positive impact on the mental health of students and others around the world. If you also like this video, please share it with others. Thank you so much.